Well, I think you had,
I'm sorry.
I think you had we had internet issues because it was that night with all the storms.
Yeah, we did, but I didn't put my camera, the recording back on when I came back on. Like, you one technical thing at a time. All right. So I feel like each of these different parts has been, I think it's worth repeating what we did because it's about how they all fit together. So the first night when I know you weren't here, we kind of talked about our own stress response because when I think of parents, I just think stress is the first thing to look at. And just having an awareness for your stress response, but also knowing that there's a point when you're at capacity and you have to be protective of what you take on or let go of what you can. But kind of on a regular basis, knowing where you're at helps you to know when you need to take more care of yourself, right? Or ask for help or delegate, right? So
Hmm.
I think that's important. And then the idea of learning about, there's a point when you're at capacity, you can't handle anything else. That's kind of a new concept for me. I was recently introduced to that. I think it's quite amazing. But then the next night we talked about, and what if what's going on with our kids is they're at capacity and it's about their stress response and it's showing up as behavior and we're trying to discipline and that just adds to the stress, right?
Right.
And you know what? It's funny because it's kind of a little off topic, but on topic. This is such an emotional topic for me because I care so much about it. Like raising our kids should be a beautiful experience. We should be able to have
Hmm.
fun, but it can be extremely stressful. And so I think it's just really important that when we think we're doing the right thing and we're trying to discipline or we're setting consequences, but the child is overwhelmed or beaten down by whatever their day was like or something that went on for them. Um, they just can't handle the rules or even control their own behavior at a certain point. So anyway, so then the third night we talked about, and then what are you going to do when the behaviors are happening? Like, so we talked about how to calm ourselves down because it's really about co-regulating. They're going to feel our energy and we're going to react to their energy so it can be very intense and everything could be escalating for both people. But if we could learn how to be present and take that responsibility and try to like calm ourselves down, that will calm them down and then you'll be able to have a dialogue about what's going on. And so tonight is really about all right, when you're in that cycle of trying to deal with behavior issues, or I mean, we're focusing on behavior because I do think it's some of the most important part, stress. It's it's probably the most common thing people would want to learn about to improve their family well-being, I would think. But there are other details, I guess, that could be important as well, for sure. Um, but the thing is, when you're in that cycle of like intense emotions, some yelling, the kid's not listening, you're trying to have whatever it is you do in your home for discipline when there's something that didn't go right, a behavior that you don't want to see happening. Um, it just the relationship starts to kind of deteriorate. The connection isn't there. So like wouldn't it be great if we can parent and maintain connection so we
Yeah.
could, right? Like wouldn't that
Hmm.
be beautiful?
Well, I think, sometimes if we were raised to, not have any ability to control our emotions, basically, like have no crisis management skills. Like I know I had to learn them in my 20s because I wasn't able to mirror my parents' behavior when I was a child. And, I was able to be present with my kids because always in the back of my mind, I was like, I don't want to be my mother. And have my kids want to isolate themselves away from me. And I feel, we always have like our times where we could have done better, but um, I feel like my kids have really good coping skills with life and stress, and we don't push each other away. But my struggles are with my stepkids because they're
Mhm.
in such a volatile environment, and then when they're here, our focus is on them, trying to, regulate them and teach them how to self-regulate. And we just never seem to get anywhere because it's not enough time on a weekend to correct that
Sure, and then
response,
they're going back to the chaotic environment, which, and then you get them again after they've been in an environment where they haven't been exercising. I mean, all of these self-regulation tools or co-regulating or nervous system, um, restoration is not the word I want to use, but they
No,
work
that's a good
best
word.
when we use them all the time, right? Like they don't work really good like this week, yes, or on the weekend, and then back to the another environment where nobody understands that language and nobody's going to support that process, right?
Right.
So that's what it is. But anyway, here's what we were going to do. We're really tonight talking about connecting the connection you have with your child and then insights that you gain if you can maintain that connection. And then you get improved behavior. So I think you might learn some things tonight that even though you can't do it the way you would have or you did with your other children, there may be some tools that you could take away from this.
That'd be awesome.
So the first thing I would have to say is what happens when there's a behavior that's escalating from your child? And like what can you do about it? Or what's really going on for you, I think is the first step. Like okay, I guess the thing is, how do we fix the thing when what we're normally doing isn't working? Oh, here's Patrice. Good.
Yeah. Well, my I always think is like don't react, especially if you really want to. It's not always best. Sometimes it's just good to have that awkward silence just to kind of take a take a breath in between before you respond, because a lot of times they're just venting or they just need to get it out, and then sometimes that diffuses it. And I work with my husband on this because he gets so frustrated, um, and he gets frustrated with like his work, like a lot of things, and I feel like, you know trying to get him to not react, especially with the kids, like his kids especially, because it becomes just like a tornado of energy with the three of them sometimes. And I try not to step into that because
Right.
then I'm like, I'm completely outnumbered, and it's just kind of like if they get escalated, and then we can come back later and say, when we looked at what happened and how what was said, what could we have done better? It's kind of like we give ourselves, like we grade ourselves on,
That
you know,
that's an
our
excellent tool. Yeah, that's one of the things that I was going to talk about as well.
and that everybody has to be a part of the solution. It can't just be, dad working his tail off to be calm and work hard if the kids aren't going to even try to put in any effort. So like, how would you grade yourself? Would you give yourself a D? Or would you give
Right.
yourself a B there because, dad's making the effort and you guys are not, so what could you have done differently next time to
Yeah.
get the outcome you really want, which would be probably attention or,
So
you know,
I can give you another spin on that that might be a little bit more playful, actually.
yeah.
Um, but I'll get to that a little later, actually. So I guess the thing is that when something's not working, yeah. So what I didn't say last week is the first step to calming your nervous system is to pause, which is what you're saying. Like, do nothing. Don't
Mhm.
react. Don't do anything because when you're in that high emotional state, it may not be the thing you want to be doing,
Right.
right? So you're
Mhm.
like you were saying, you take a little step back and just have a little quiet for a second, right?
Yeah.
So then it's like I was thinking about it. What is the internal emotional experience that's happening for a person? Kind of same as things we talked about last week, but what if we could just be okay with what's happening, except that it is part of normal child rearing? Like
Mm-hmm.
there are going to be behavior issues because when children have a behavior issue, it's like part of learning, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think what happens in parents is they lose sight of that, and I think that they have a little panic attack,
Yeah.
So it's kind of
Mm-hmm.
like, what if we could just be like, okay, this is happening. This does happen. Acknowledge what's going wrong, see what you're feeling, and just be gentle with yourself. But I don't think we need to go to the catastrophizing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think, like, what kind of emotions would you say come up in a parent in that instant, that first instant?
You want to rescue your child out of that. Um, like it's almost like you just want to take them away from that feeling that they're expressing because you know that they're not happy and it's not healthy, but they have to be taught how to do that themselves. Like we can't constantly rescue them
True.
out of that. Like I don't know, like I just want to put water on it. Like if they're on fire, I just want to put the fire out.
Right. You want to
Leave
come in and make them, yeah, yeah, you want them to feel better.
I want to fix it.
So when you're saying that, you're not talking about like a child that's explosive, that's being like super nasty to you, or, hitting siblings, because that's what a lot of the other parents that I've talked to as I was preparing for this series, like those are bigger issues. I think that what happens hey, Patrice, you can chime in if you want to also, or unmute if you'd like, or not, and that's fine too. But I feel like there's like a lack of confidence, like they don't know what they're doing. And some of these parents have really little kids, so they're kind of new to the game, right?
Yeah.
And then here's the thing, do parents even talk anymore about? I'm sure people have some good friends they talk to, but in general, I don't think that we have the support systems or other parents where we could say, I lost my shit last night. Like,
Right.
right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
because back in the day, you could have conversations face to face with people more, and people didn't have like a social media happy family image. And you could just have a real like sharing, right? But I feel like there's a lack of confidence, maybe fear that you don't know what you're doing, and the idea that lost control, that you can't control your kid,
Mm-hmm.
is really scary, right? Like, because you're
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be the one to do it. And then even if they're disrespecting you, yeah, it's a big emotional response. Um, so, so I guess the thing is, I don't know. I hope people will watch the replay on this. So I'll just say, if you were able to learn other strategies that were going to work better, would you want to? Right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
isn't that, could
Absolutely.
you find a new way to manage certain behaviors with your kids if they were going to work better?
Absolutely.
So here's what I usually say. I don't care. It's not even about kids. If something's not working, you need a new strategy. It doesn't matter if it's the right one. You got to try something different,
Right. You
right?
can't keep doing the same thing and expect a different outcome.
Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we're stuck because first of all, we're not able to think under stress, right? So we're not coming
Mm-hmm.
up with a new idea.
No, we're just thing.
So I feel like a new idea has to happen when you're not stressed. So you're ready, right?
Yes.
So anyway, I'm going to talk a little bit about some things that I found helpful. And I'll tell you, my one of my kids, who is now 30 years old, is I don't know why I need to add that. I just think it's interesting. Yeah, we were doing oh, you can't do that, all right. Like it was the thing where it's like, okay, the behavior happens like, all right, and we count and did the counting thing. One, two, at three, you had to go to your room, right? So have a timeout, then you can come back out and we'll proceed as though you've you're now more able to handle yourself socially, right? Get
Hmm.
along with others, etc. But it was like he was going to timeout all the time. And I'm like, oh, this is not working. Because if something is, well, I realized that he had a learning disability. I mean, I knew that he did, right? And I'm like, all right, well, the thing is, when it comes to discipline, the goal is to teach better behavior. So if the kid keeps going to timeout for the same behavior, yes, they would come out and they maybe didn't do it again for a while, but like it's not working, right? They're not learning. You would expect you would have less of the behavior and less of the timeout for that particular reason, right?
Right.
So I said, well, if he has a learning challenge, maybe it kind of it maybe it's not just about school. So maybe he doesn't really understand what the point of it is, or he doesn't have the ability to understand um, some aspect of why the behavior is not okay, or he had some body awareness issues and cause and effect, understanding. So there's some like cognitive issues around that too. So I just modified the rules a little bit, right? Like I would try to handle it like teaching and teach him why this is not okay and what his part was in it. Like if someone's hurt, how did it happen? And I guess my point is parents are teachers. You're teaching kids. You have to approach it as a teacher, right? Like not so much um, punishment. I don't. They're different. For a child to learn, I think it has to be a uh, certain things need to be in place, I guess.
Yeah, and you don't want it to just be like a dictatorship where, the parent's always trying to control the behavior of the child and the child just doesn't understand.
Right. Or they understand, but they actually can't handle what was expected of them in some
Yeah.
cases, right?
Hmm.
So, so I guess then I was thinking, what are the possible reasons that could be at the root of a bad behavior if you sat with it? And I don't think a child wants to be a bad person. I don't think anyone wants to be a bad person. There might be some people that don't care, but hopefully we don't run into those. Um, so I'm going to just list them, but or if you would like to chime in, you may. Like, what do you think is at the root at some really bad behaviors?
How much sleep did they get last night? What did they eat that day? Um, and like just, or even like social things, because I know, their friends and them could be fighting at school or at practice or something. That could just be some sort of outside factor that's affecting them that isn't even internal to the house.
For sure, and you
Yeah,
wouldn't
just
have
like the
any
rest
way
of
of
us.
knowing, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that's really important. So that goes back to the child having capacity, right? Like, what else did they take on that day?
Mm-hmm.
Or, well, how well resourced are they when they left the house in the morning, right?
Right.
Um, but the thing is, when we're overwhelmed, how easily can we do something that someone else is telling us we have to do? And they're kind of pre-failed, didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
So then there's all this, let's say you have excess emotional energy and you're even having trouble hearing the rules, remembering the rules, caring about the rules. And again, you've pre-failed, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then you're starting to feel down on yourself because you have trouble behaving and the person that you care about is always upset with you. And you probably have a hard time trying, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like the other thing is sometimes we set the bar too high. Like if your kid is really little, they're not going to behave for a certain amount of time, but they can behave for 5 or 10 minutes. And they're not going to be able to behave for like an hour and a half and then get a reward. you kind of have to give them praise every 10 minutes, you know?
Right. Mm-hmm.
But so the thing is, like, what if our expectation is not appropriate for their age, or they have some kind of disability that makes things harder for them? One of the funny things I did with actually the same child of my three, if I were busy, I'd be like, I can't help you with that right now, but I hear you and I will. And I go, you're gonna wait. And then I'm like, almost immediately I'd be like, you're doing a great job waiting. He was maybe like two when we started doing that. And I'm like, another minute would go by and I'd be like, you're still waiting. Awesome. You know,
Oh, that's
because
good. Mm-hmm.
they need feedback that because it's hard, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, all right. I also have, it's funny because I've thought about all of the research that I did as a mom and all the books that I read. I am what I do know is a lot of what adults know is abstract thinking that a small child doesn't know. So when we talk about soon or later or next week, you may as well say never because they don't know what that is. They don't tell time. They're in the now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're almost a victim of their fun. Like they may not be listening to you because they're having fun, right? Because that's right now. And
Yeah,
they can't
definitely.
self-control when there's fun to be had for a certain child might be a really difficult thing for them, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So, um, we need to figure out what they can do and have an expectation that is appropriate. So know what their limitations are. And that's not always about age.
No, it isn't. You're absolutely right. It's really like environmental for some of them. Um, like I have two 14-year-olds. My stepson's 14 and my biological son is 14, and they're two totally different 14-year-olds. And just because they're 14, I can't assume that they're on the same wavelength or same maturity level or,
For
yeah.
sure, right? So when we talk about
Mm-hmm.
what's age appropriate, like, and all right, so if a kid has developmental issues, then of course we should be aware that there's a difference. But
Mm-hmm.
they're just differences in terms of their personalities and how sensitive one might be to another,
Right.
you know, or just their other strengths and abilities, like to multitask or to follow directions or whatever it is we want to expect of them. We need to take the time to know what's hard for them to do when we set an expectation. Actually, I don't even like that setting an expectation. You're kind of setting what's another word, I guess? Yeah, it's like where's the bar, right? Like what are we aiming for? The goal, let's just say, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the first thing is assume there's a reason for the behavior and 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 see the good in the child and drop the assumption that they're being bad. And then you can ask them what's going on for them, right? Maybe you can learn something.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So there's where like the connection part comes in. If we stop assuming that we have to use uh, strictness or, you can't always. It's because that's not what they need, right?
Right.
So, it would also, I'll tell you another little story from my own. This is actually pretty recent, but throughout raising my kids, sometimes your first reaction is, I can't believe this happened. I can't believe someone would do this, right? And then you're like, but I'd like to know more. Like, it doesn't make sense, right? So then
Mm-hmm.
so I would refuse to believe the assumption that I'm telling myself and find out what they have to say. So just the other day, like my 30-year-old had the TV blasting downstairs, and I'm like, that is a little loud. Like I was in the kitchen upstairs and it was so loud. And of course he didn't really hear me. We
Because
or
the TV was loud.
he maybe he heard me, but he didn't turn it off, and I'm just like, all right, whatever. And when he came up later, he said he was on the treadmill. And you know what? I want him on the treadmill.
That's good.
Yeah, it is
Yeah. So
good
the
because
treadmill was so
he
loud, he had to turn the volume up so he could hear it.
absolutely,
And
and
that makes
he's
sense. That
just
makes perfect sense.
yeah, and he's just started to working out. And he I don't know how to put it, but like yeah, he needs to exercise and lose some weight and take better care of himself. So what if I had reacted, because he wasn't listening to me? Like, of course he's 30, so it's a little different. But there's so many times that I'm grateful that I did not like handle it the way I first thought of,
Yeah, definitely.
So the other thing I think is a really important thing that I learned is if you ask your kid, what's going on? Why are you doing this? Or what, do you like, can you help me to understand why this is happening? And they say they don't know. That's an answer, right? Like it's not really helpful in that uh, we can't strategize with I don't know. Yeah, we can. We can help them to know. We can help them to understand themselves better. So, but I don't know is a valid answer. And when your kid doesn't know why they're behaving a certain way, they certainly need your help, right? So I feel like we have to have open channels of communication and stay curious. And our job is to teach them about themselves so that they can learn what they need, so they can feel better, and then they can be more successful. So I feel like we have to like stay present and open and calm ourselves down so that we can hear what's going on. Or not only that, I mean, if your child does have some kind of developmental thing going on or less ability to calm themselves, um, I'm sorry, I lost the thought. It's like your worst nightmare when you're recording yourself.
It's all good.
No, it doesn't matter. So anyway, here's the thing. If we think of it as a teaching them, right?
Hmm.
What is good for a learning environment? We want kids to feel hopeful that they can meet an expectation. We want them to feel supported if they need our help. I remember what I was going to say. Ideally, we get to know them so well that we see the subtle signs of dysregulation before it turns into behavior.
Yes.
And then we have things built into their routine, and we teach them when they need to take a break, when they need to get more rest, when kind of activities help restore them. But they may need us to help them learn that, right?
Right.
So it's not always bad behavior. Sometimes it's please help me. But anyway, if you wanted to learn something, if any of us want to learn anything, we want to be hopeful, feel supported, feel safe, feel successful, and know that it's okay if we did our best, but we might not always succeed. So, I have a couple of tips, but we can also do questions because I've been talking a lot. Patrice, tell me what you'd like to get out of tonight. Maybe she's preoccupied and cannot unmute. She can put in the chat if she needs to tell us anything, though. Okay, Patrice? All right, so it's all about building your rapport with your child and staying curious and open and helping them to know that it's okay to just do their best. that is only true if they're not actually hurting someone else.
Right.
So, so I think, okay, so when it comes to making rules, I would say we should keep the rules simple and the consequences logical because we're teaching them something. So if the consequences don't seem to make sense, they're not related to the behavior, it doesn't help reinforce why the behaviors that a good, certain behavior is important and another one is not desirable, right?
Hmm.
Um, So I feel like, again, especially like young kids or kids that have certain lacking in understanding or self-control, I do think it's helpful for them to understand the reasons, but also explain it in age-appropriate terms. And so, in other words, here's an example. Let's say you're not getting along with your siblings. You need to go take some time and play by yourself for a while until you can come back and be inappropriate. It just makes sense instead of taking away some other random thing, right?
Right.
Um, that's what I think. So I know there's like, it wasn't that easy when my kids were younger trying to figure out what they needed, but the discipline that other people were using didn't always work. So I read this great book called The Explosive Child,
Mm.
and in it they talked about rules. And I think I was talking about it a little bit last week, was it? And I think I have more clarity now because I went over and kind of reviewed what the part is that I remembered. But it's almost like if you had basket A, B, and C. A is non-negotiable. It's a safety issue. It's got to be you're firm. There's no room for not doing it, right?
Hmm.
B is the area where you can teach and you can negotiate and maybe they want to do something, but they could if this, and then you help them to understand why. If this, then that's a better plan. And then it's a yes, right?
Hmm.
And then C, it doesn't matter. It's not really, it's something that they want that doesn't matter and it doesn't need to be a rule. And so for a child that's having trouble with behavior, we can't have every rule be equal. But what a wonderful thing to be working in that basket B to help them. It's okay to have a conversation about the whys of the behavior and why they should do it. If it's a basket B, it's not okay for a basket A for them to need to be convinced, right?
Right.
So I feel like that's it. Anyway, the book is called The Explosive Child by Ross Greene. I thought it was amazing. And I used a lot of what was in there. But I remember also like I was like, well, my kid's not really explosive. The title of the book is explosive. The stuff is still good. And then I realized my kid was more of an imploder because he would fall
Mm.
apart, right?
Right.
So it's kind of like all internal. So it did apply, um, although I don't think he points that out in the book, that that's another version of exploding, but it's just all kept inside, right? Okay, here's the tip that I used a lot, even when they were your kids' ages, and it's the do-over.
Mm.
Sometimes it's tiring to keep putting your kid in timeout. And then I thought, well, if I'm trying to teach, wouldn't we want to end it on a positive note and learn from it? So it's like, let's say, I remember one incident. I think the one kid was 12 and the other one was 10. And one took the ball out of their hand. And I'm like, all right, we're having a do-over. Let's go back to where it went bad. You had the ball, right? It's funny, right? You had
Hmm.
the ball. But it's funny because it's a 10 and 12-year-old. So I said to the other one, what do you want to do if you want to use the ball? And he goes, can I have the ball? And the other
Oh,
one, of course, goes, no, I'm using it. So then the other one goes, can I have it when you're done?
Oh,
And it was just sweet, right? And they were both laughing during it because, all right, actually, here's the hidden part. The punishment is I'm making you go through this
that is the punishment. Yeah.
arduous process of where did it go wrong and what would have been better.
Yeah,
And
but
it,
that's at least constructive
I know, but it's
punishment.
like
Yeah.
almost like my way of being like, you're not going to just behave that way. We're going to have to go over this. It's
No, I think that's great.
I
That's a
have
good
fun with
idea.
it. We were all laughing about it, right? But you could do it with a more serious situation or with a little kid. So like let's say your kid got mouthy. So here's the thing about a kid. When a kid is saying something fresh when they're little, if they heard it somewhere, it's going to come out of their mouth. They may not
Hmm.
even know what they're saying. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
So what if you could just be like, I don't really like the way you said that. Can you try again?
Hmm.
And then they could try again, and then nobody needs to do anything. And it seems to me it would be a better learning experience than going to timeout.
And shutting them down and putting space between you and them,
Exactly.
and
And
making them like feel really bad about themselves. Um, I know I believe in that wholeheartedly, and that is such a good thing. And it's I just run into the challenge because the consequences of the behavior of what they do when they're in their other house, I feel like they don't match. Like the crime doesn't fit the punishment, and then there's also no learning and there's no construction, of like how to do better or be better, and it's just isolation. And then there's no coping skills, and then there's no way for them to self-soothe, and then they don't really know what they should have done because
yeah, and the
nothing's
kid's
mirrored
kind of
correctly to them
crushed,
either.
right?
Yeah, and it's such a destructive thing. And and I love that. Like, I know when they're here, I think that's a good idea to say, let's do a do-over. Where did it go wrong? I think that's something I'm going to try that with them.
So I would
And
also tell you something really cool about that. You can have a do-over too.
yeah,
I think it's great because it's like leveling the playing field. Like we're not perfect. Sometimes
yeah,
I'm not remembering how handy that I don't remember my behavior problems. But there were times I'm like, well, that shouldn't have come out that way. Let me have a do-over,
yeah,
right?
right.
And I would sometimes say, I think I need a timeout. So I'll be back in 10 minutes.
Yeah. Oh God, I would put myself in timeout so much
Can you
just to
imagine
have
how
the quiet
great?
time. I know. That would be the reward for
No, but I
us.
mean, it's so great to model that for a child. Obviously, at a certain age, you're just being funny. But when they're little, it's like I should not have behaved that way because that I lost control of myself or whatever it is, right?
Hmm.
And they feel honored, I guess, is a word I would pick. That
Yeah,
you
and they can see that you were capable of making mistakes and still being okay, and still, like yourself. You know what I mean?
right
Like
and
you
be
don't have to hate on
accountable
yourself.
and help them to understand they didn't deserve it, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So yeah, I have on my notes here that I think about rather than timeout being a punishment, what if it's meant to be a pause so that they can regroup until they can be appropriate again? Like we all need that. That's why I was just saying I think no, I think you're supposed to get your the number of minutes that equals your year. Like right now, tomorrow's my 65th birthday. So
Oh, happy birthday.
if I went to time out, I'd get an hour and 5 minutes.
That sounds splendid.
Actually, my kids are grown. I can get a timeout anytime I want.
Yeah.
All right, so here's one that I think was huge for us growing up. I mean, my kids growing up. One-on-one dates.
Yeah.
So imagine spending time with someone where you are not, you're spending time with someone the way you would if it was the way you would spend time with a friend, right? We're
Hmm.
not fixing our friends, correcting them. We're not looking for things that we need to work on, right? We're just listening to them, hearing about their lives, getting to know them deeper. And I feel like you could spend all of like the years that you're raising your children never actually having that. You might have some fun as a family, but like the idea that you would literally have a date one-on-one with with one of your children is
I love that. I did that with mine. I would pull them out of school and they would tell their teacher, "My mom and I have a date. We're going to the movies or like we're doing something." And it was funny, and then I was like, "Okay, maybe I probably shouldn't do this." But, during school, but I did it anyway. Like once in a blue moon, it would be like, you haven't been absent all year. Like you're missing tomorrow. Sorry, we're doing something.
I love
Um,
it. So yeah, my
or I'm picking
daughter,
them up early. I'm picking them up at 1 or whatever, and then they're done with school for the rest of the day, and we go do something. And it was nice because then you did have that one-on-one time, and then you have like your inside jokes and all the goofy stuff that you did. And I encourage my husband to do that with his kids because his time is so limited. Like you should just, go where they live and take one of them out to dinner, and like on
absolutely,
a
because
Wednesday, whatever, like midweek, and just check in like how's your week going? What's going great, what's not going great, and I always did that with my kids. Like, what is like today? We'll sit at the dinner table because for me, dinner is like sacred. If you're missing dinner, there has to be a really big excuse because dinner is like the only time I really get to see my kids. And at this point, now that they're teenagers and they're social, but
right.
it's like, what was your high and low today? Or even this week? Like, when I have my stepkids on the weekend and I get them on Friday, like, what was your high of the week? What was your low of the week? And let's all talk about it, you know? And it just gives them a chance to like have everyone's input and support, of either way of like congratulating them that they aced their social studies test or, you know, the other one of, something not going great and how could we support them
Right.
in
And
it?
actually you're teaching the siblings how to do that for each other because you're
Yeah.
doing it to, as a family.
Hmm.
That's awesome. Um, the other thing that's really interesting is when you take that child out, they have a different personality when you sit down with your one child separately because they're not competing for attention anymore,
Yeah.
and they
Yeah.
like if you ask them a question, they have to think about their answer. They have the time to think about that, or if they remembered something else from a previous conversation, that you had like 15 minutes ago. It's okay because they don't have like another kid that's, you know, getting the attention and they're splitting it, right? Like it's
Hmm.
it's it's great. I actually still love doing that. It's funny because last night my husband took my one son out and the other one wasn't home. He was away for a few days and he kind of came back and he goes, "How come you didn't go?" I go, "I wasn't invited." And then he goes, "Is it because dad goes to the movies with me a lot?" And I go, "Yeah, a little bit, but it doesn't really need to be about that." But anyway, yeah, I feel like when the kids are little, I mean, we had three and it was kind of crazy. They
Yeah.
were not that far apart. They weren't as close as some other people's kids, but it was like 2 years between the youngest and then 3 years. Um, But if you were the one parent that got to go out with one kid, that's a break. You're you're having
Yeah.
a calm conversation and a meal out. You don't have to cook, right? So it was
Yeah.
nice. So the thing is, though, if you start to do that and you have one-on-one time and you're more gentle with your discipline and you're stay curious about the reason or why are you behaving that way? What's going on with you? And or you start to recognize that they're not doing great, like subtle signs that they're like stressed out. um you know your kid better and they feel safer with you and they know that they can talk to you when there's something bothering them. And you know what? They're going to behave better.
Hmm.
I just, yeah, it's interesting. So, like, I remember reading something that I was, oh, all right, another like kind of emotional thing, but if you compare discipline and punishment, discipline doesn't always mean punishment, but the how effective that is for teaching a better behavior. I remember reading that is by far more powerful that a child not want to disappoint a parent who they feel very connected to.
Hmm.
So I feel like that's because you build a rapport. That's because you're maintaining a connectedness and it's like these relationships are in your life for so long and it should be a cherished time, right?
Right.
So I think a lot of parents just think it's a big responsibility for getting your kid to be turn into a certain type of person, and it's hard to let go of the fix this, correct this.
Right.
Um, but I feel like you can do both. You can be firm when you need to be, but you can also just create a safe place for them to share the why of why they behave a certain way. So, so I don't know if there's stuff here that you got from this, but I hope it was useful to sit and talk about it.
Oh, it always is. Thank you. Definitely. And I love the do-over. I'm definitely going to do that.
So now you'll have to let me know how that goes because it's amusing. Well, I know you especially
Yeah.
have siblings that aren't agreeing, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe even subtle things like you're at the dinner table and one kid keeps getting cut off. So you're like, I'm sorry, what just happened? I'm pretty sure you were talking. Let's have a do-over, right?
Yeah.
You just raise awareness, I guess. So I guess my question is, I started this little series because my business coach, I said, how do what do I do if I want to change my focus? And, I was kind of like, feel like I'm kind of starting over, right? Because now I used to just do general wellness, whatever the issue was, emotional, mental, physical. Still will, anyone who has a problem, pets also. But I really love the idea of focusing on family well-being. And so he said, do a webinar, and if you can, do one a week. And I'm like, okay, I'll make a series.
Yeah.
So then where do we go with that? Should I continue to do webinars? Maybe we need to start some support groups. Or I really think the stuff that we did in this 4-part webinar could be a course. What do you
Yeah, definitely. I think you could do all three still. You could have it be like an open forum where you can gather information of like where you can help people. And then eventually, when you have enough of us, you can kind of divide us out with the issues that we have, because someone who has, you know, little kids or, non-biological kids, like you could do like step families.
Right,
There's so many things because like I know my kids really well and we have our, you know, we just have our we know what we're doing like with each other. We understand each other completely. And then like I don't have that cohesiveness when my stepkids come here because all of the attention goes on them.
right. Well,
And then
because
I then I have guilt about it.
they don't know how to fit into the team that's so solid either. Actually, I
Yeah.
would say this, I don't have a full formulated thought on it, but that might be part of it is that your team of 3 or 4 depending on, how you look at it, figure
Yeah.
out the best way to integrate them when they're there into the dynamics.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? I'm not sure exactly because I don't know the exact problems, but
Yeah. And the one that we need to work on the most hasn't been here. So that's kind of been, the one that Callie, his daughter, is here, and she fits right into, like, you know, we do the one-on-one and communicate with her, and
okay,
take time with her, and she's just a great kid, and she's completely like, she comes here and she's so relaxed after she's here for a couple hours. It's like all that turmoil has to just exit her, and I'm like, you just relax, like we'll connect later, like just decompress. And
right,
she's just like, she walks in the door and she just hugs me, and then you can just feel her body like release like a whole bunch of crap, and then it's like, okay, now we can start our weekend, because but in the beginning it took her hours to be able to calm down, to get to where she was like, okay, now I'm here, but now it's a lot faster because it just happens
because
a lot
she
quick.
associates the entry into the home with letting go.
Yes. Yeah. And it's so great. And my hope is like eventually for her brother to, get the help that he needs so that he can be, part of this family as well.
Right.
But yeah, it's definitely been great, and it's fun watching her grow, and it's it's crazy the stuff that she'll share, from the other house, because it's so foreign to me, like all of that chaos. Like I couldn't live like that. That would be like your TV blasting every day, all night long without a break. Like that's kind of how it feels like her life is on the other
Right.
side, but also that's her interpretation of it. It might not be reality, but um yeah. So I like that we're the calm, if you can just come here and just be calm, like if you
Right.
need it. We definitely laugh a lot. We're insane. We're all really weird people, which is great. And we embrace our weirdness. And I think that's a big part of kids, is like they don't have to be a certain way. They can,
Well, especially not at home. There's too much pressure after they go out of the house to
yeah,
be, I don't know. They're, I'm so glad I didn't grow up with social media.
I know. We're so
I can't
fortunate.
picture it. But I mean, you got to counter. If you could create a calm home where people could be themselves and there's like actual interaction, you can
Yeah.
counter, I guess, the effects of, uh, that peer.
And then
Hopeful.
they work together. The kids like work together on stuff, it's really nice to watch. My oldest like take Callie outside to throw the football because she's doing flag football now because she wants to be like her big brother.
Okay.
And they have that bonding time together, and she just lives for that when she comes here with him, and it's just nice. It's nice that he has that with her and that she has that with him, and that I'm always trying to facilitate their relationships.
Yeah, are we talking about which brother are we talking about?
My oldest son, with my husband's daughter.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
I was going to say the son on the right in the picture.
yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. The son on the right. Yeah, Brady. He's
Yeah,
like a man child now. But
that's a great picture.
thank
And
you.
it's funny because my sons are 28 and 30, and sometimes they are having so much fun and giggling that you can't get a word in. It's just like it's like you see each other all the time. Like you're acting like you've had a reunion or something.
It's so nice. Yeah, it's so nice.
And
And
for a while we had sibling day. They were planning like these monthly sibling days.
oh, that's so nice. I hope that
Isn't
they're
it?
close when they get older, like they have the memories of, you
I'm
know.
sure they will if they're doing it now.
Yeah. My
So
brother
we
and I
didn't
used
do
to
an
play.
energy treatment tonight. Do you feel good? Do you want to do an energy treatment? Is there anything we can work on?
Oh, I'll take any energy, self-care, whatever. Yeah.
Hold on, my phone
Hook the
is
vacuum up too.
somewhere and an
I'm
alarm
kidding.
is going off. Okay. I would never have found it there if it weren't for the alarm going on. Okay, I'm going to send energy. Actually, yeah, there's a bit of stress tension there for both of you.
Hmm.
And when you listen to the recording, you can still get energy out of that. So it's like you can like the last part of the class for tonight. You can just sit there and take in energy. So when I do this, I'm using these words that I use for Qigong that open up energy flow. It's take kindness and benevolence as basis. Take frankness and friendliness to heart. Speak with reason, treat with courtesy, act with emotion, and accomplish results. It's all about being open-hearted and the best version of yourself and how we treat each other. Take kindness and benevolence as basis. Take frankness and friendliness to heart. Speak with reason, treat with courtesy, act with emotion, and accomplish results. It's that mental field energy for all the overthinking that we need to do all day long. I'm going to clear that. It's like pulling the plug.
Yeah, on this bathtub and letting it just drain out. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Patrice disappeared.
Hmm.
There she is. Um,
I'm sorry. I had so much trouble I mean I heard m- almost all of it, but anytime I tried to like unmute myself or talk, like you didn't hear me and stuff. And then just now I like recently lost you again.
oh, well, talk to me now.
Talk to you now.
What parts did you want to jump in on?
No, that was really good advice. Like when you said like let's have a redo, like when you're like with the ball or some um or yeah, when you're doing the ball and you said let's have a redo. Like
Right.
that made a lot of sense. And I really love um I'm sorry, what was the other person's name that was on?
Stacy,
Stacy. I really
she's still
love
here.
Oh, hi Stacy. I
Hi.
really love you know, well, both of your ideas, how you try to do one-on-one with a child, and also how you say when your stepdaughter comes over, how she just like decompresses and like that's I just that made me want to cry. Like,
You want to go to Stacy's house, Patrice?
yeah, yeah.
I can give you my address and my hugs are free. Yeah. Yeah. It's no,
Well,
it's
we
good.
need that. We need a safe house, right? A safe
Definitely.
place. Like, we talk about a safe word. We need a safe place.
Yeah.
Yeah. I call this like
Um,
the house of healing. Like my one best friend, she's taking care of her mother who's gradually mentally deteriorating. And she just came here this past weekend and like I barely saw her. She just wanted to be in the house and be with us. And she had meals with us, but for the most part, she was like checked out. And then she left like so much better. It's just kind of like sometimes you just need a place to go to just not have to think or do. And,
for
you know,
sure.
it's good. And we all need it, you know. And I appreciate you doing the energy exchange tonight. Like I felt lighter in my neck. I tend to hold like a lot of tension in my neck and shoulders.
Um,
And I have like more range of mobility. I felt like myself unlock when you were doing that.
that's awesome. That's great. I worked with someone. She had one session. She's going like this with her arms, and she's like, "Did you see my arms?" I'm like, "Yeah, but I don't know what it means." She's like, "I haven't been able to raise my arms in 20 years."
Oh, wow.
Oh,
Where she could only get to a certain part, but she realized that things had like kind of shifted, and she was able to. So that's very cool. Stacy, I'm doing a energy treatment at the doctor's farmers market on Friday, July 11th in the morning.
At
Before the,
Ethos?
yep, 8 to 9, and the market opens at 9.
Oh,
So I don't know
wow.
if you're working then, but just so you know,
No, I'm off on Fridays. So between 8 and 9
in the
over there.
morning,
Okay.
somewhere it's being advertised, but
On Facebook or I guess email. They send out emails too.
so that might be it.
Okay. I'll
If
watch
there's
for
a place where you're supposed to sign up, I mean, it's free, so, but it's still nice for me to know who's coming or how many, right?
Oh, definitely. My husband and I might go. Like he
I'd
might
like
be able
that.
to because he starts work at 9, but maybe he can come at least. Maybe he
Does
can.
he work? Can he get to work? Like
Well,
how
he works from
far?
home, so it's just as long as he doesn't have a
Oh,
call that starts at 9, he can, he can be out of office, mark himself out of office. But that
gotcha.
might be good for us to do that.
Awesome. That'd be awesome. Yeah. I just said that, but it's really awesome, so I had to say it twice.
It's 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 ridiculously awesome. Sounds like. Mm,
See, I know. So you see, I had to say it too, right?
absolutely.
You know what? It's so funny. I'm never going to be formal in any of things I do with my business. I'll be professional enough, but I just can't help having fun.
I love that. No, I think that's so important because there's a time and a place to have that like stuffy classroom setting. Like
I
even,
don't have a time or place for that. I
yeah,
don't
and
want
even
that.
like when at my job, like being a dental hygienist, we don't have that like stuffy clinical atmosphere. Like you know, it's very homey in there too. And I so appreciate that, not having to be
Hmm.
so sterile I mean, it's obviously sterile. Like I'm a big germaphobe, but like talking about
You
it in a
don't mean
literal sense, but like,
sterile in that way,
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, life should be enjoyable. And if I'm running my own business, I get to set the tone.
yeah. No, it's great.
So anyway, so you think if we had a support group and everyone had different age kids, it would still be helpful?
Yeah, I do. I think so. I
All right,
mean,
we can start with that. I think it would be nice to find a group of people that have teens and then for people that have small children. I think those are
hmm,
the biggest populations, which would be nice if I can run two groups, right?
yeah. And you could even have like a center for mommy timeouts. I'm being funny.
What do you
Like
mean a
have
center?
I'm just being like a place where we could run and have our
Oh,
timeout because
oh,
we need our
I I had an idea. Here's an idea because you guys have graduated from my mini series here. So you know some things, right? But a lot of parents don't know to check in with their emotions, take a pause, right? Um, I thought it would be cool if I was like a helpline, right? Text me when things are going wrong and you prepay and then it's like a certain price per minute. So it's a
Oh,
prepaid account and you
yeah.
reach out when you're in trouble. Would that
Yeah,
be kind of funny, but also maybe
absolutely.
helpful?
Help,
Hmm.
helpful.
Sorry.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Because I had to
I,
bring that word back too.
yeah, I just think it's a funny concept, but I think it's not only funny because it's me and it's like, yeah, I'm gonna be it's like I'm on retainer.
Yeah.
But it's not funny for the person that doesn't have someone to call, right? So I don't know how
Mhm.
many people really have someone that they can say, I just said this terrible thing to my kid, or this is what's happening. My kid just, told me, some nasty thing. They're like 3 years old. They're I don't know, because I don't think people are real with each other. They're not sharing anything that they're not proud of. Is that true?
Well, I think I know with some of my girlfriends, like we get real vulnerable and raw and we can really like dissect ourselves, but I think the social media, like you said, like everybody's trying to portray this like perfect lifestyle and you don't know what to believe and what not to believe. They're like every house obviously has issues, right? You can't just think like everybody's fine and then you don't talk about it because you think, oh, I'm the only one that has like
Right.
chaos in my life, and it's not true.
Well,
And
not only that, but if you spend a lot of time saying or showing this perfect, happy family, how do your friends know to check in on you?
right,
You get the support you need.
yeah, or if you're always like looking and acting like you have it together, like if I had my video on, you'd be like, okay, this is Aunt Jemima on the other end with her hair up in a turban, like I just, yeah, the towel. And we're all fallible creatures and none of us are perfect, and I think that that's like the pressure is to be that. And
It's too much. Could you imagine if you just didn't have to? Like you could just be doing your best. You can't do better than your best,
yeah,
right? No matter who you are and what the best is, you cannot do better than your best. So,
No, if you're doing your best, then that's great.
right. And quite frankly, we could all keep in mind that what is my best at a given moment may not be as good as my best on another day.
mm-hmm,
And the same for our kids. So I'll leave that as
absolutely,
a last thought
mm-hmm,
that we don't know if they're doing their best. So
yeah,
anyway, I feel like, yeah, it's very rewarding to think that I can help other people, build better relationships. You know what I was thinking actually? A co-parenting and communication and connection class. It's not kind of like couples. I don't really know if I wanted to be doing like couples, but I I feel like a lot of conversations are not understood the purpose of a conversation, right? When there's a conversation, when people are speaking to each other, it's either like you need something, you want to tell them something, or you want connection. So it's really good to know. I feel like it would be kind of cool to explore that as a group.
Yeah.
So
You
I
definitely have, you're definitely very helpful, and Donna and Stacy, you you sound almost like you could run one of these classes yourself too. Um, but Donna, you definitely you that's definitely a niche for you, helping families or helping parents, and
thank you. I feel
you
like it is.
you mean
I,
you've helped me.
in my recent video, I was like, I guess I'm a parent and family well-being expert.
Yeah.
Like, am I? And then I was thinking of all the books I've read. I'm like, yeah, I think I am actually.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's nice when you can be that. And then, because a lot of us are, we're like, well, how are we doing? Like checking in, and it's nice to just kind of go over stuff and help reframe, because like we can get in really bad habits, and then it's kind of like a recentering, even if you just did like once a month, like it's like we have to get together because we have to talk about things. We have to make sure we're still doing the things.
Right.
And
Well, I mean, the thing is, life piles stuff on, right? And so when the
yeah,
stress piles on, we kind of lose track of what the best version of ourselves is.
yeah,
So yeah, so it is kind of good to have a place to talk about it. All right, we're going to do that. I got to figure out how we will structure that.
keeps us honest, keeps us in linked together to like have
Oh,
that.
yeah. Well, support,
Hmm.
right? A
Yeah,
non-judgmental place where we can talk about what's really going on. I love it. So
nice.
I hope you guys have a good night,
Yeah,
and
you too. Thank
You
you.
too.
I
Thank
hope you
you.
feel more relaxed.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye,
Bye.
honey.
Thank you.
You're welcome.